Watch it. Back off. Back off.
Well, we only got about 5 more minutes now. We're going to have...
6-3.
All right, let's go.
Let's go. We're going, fellas.
Exact time, but it was somewhere around 10, I think, or a little after. And it was a group of the prisoners, not the entire population that was in rebellion.
How were you injured, sir?
Discipline in the prison. Would you comment on that?
Well, I'm not sure what lack of discipline means. That's why it's difficult to comment.
Well, except that one of the guards who was injured on Wednesday night, and who is now in this hospital too, said yesterday there was too much permissiveness.
If that were so, why would they rebel?
Warden, do you think you are running a good prison there?
I don't know if we're making comparisons. I think we were striving to run a good prison. And frankly, I think we were achieving that collectively with the help of the inmates, the officers, the professional staff, and our own Division of Correction and Parole.
One of you guys said that if you say there wasn't organized, didn't seem to be planned, then why did it happen? Was there an inadequacy in the institution? Did you lack budgets? Why does it happen?
Well, as an administrator, I think I'm going to always say we don't have enough money, because in the presentation of our budgets, we, I think, ask for basic needs with austerity in mind. Of course, when you take a look at the whole pie and try to figure out what the slices are, I guess the governor's got a job in his hand.
Attica is inevitable. Can you tell us what you think was similar or different in this case and the resolution? Are there comparisons that can be made to Attica?
I don't think, at least for me, that's a fair question, since I don't know the Attica situation. I don't know at all.
Your guards...
You do plan on returning over there, don't you, to your work as soon as possible and continue your work there?
I got to work, and that's my job. No, I really don't know.
Your guards
What's his
said
name?
that you were...
What were the circumstances at the time?
I was on the ground, my friend, and getting stomped.
Your guards said that you had told them that if your jail had ever been taken over, you would first take the jail and then the hostages. Is that the way you actually felt about it? And were you pleased with the way it was handled?
I'm very pleased. To the best of my knowledge, nobody really got hurt afterwards, and this is what I hoped and had promised. Now, of course, if somebody steps out of line, that's another story, but I meant in terms of what you hear happening, whether it's true or not true, I'm not sure. But
Do you have any reservations at all about going back to the prison? Any reservations at all?
no.
What kind of weapons did the prisoners have? What kind of weapons?
Well, if you want to call them weapons, they took chair legs and pieces of wood and anything they can get their hands on, but they had them in their hands, but I didn't see anyone using anything at any time.
Didn't they have any shivs?
What do you mean by a shiv, my friend?
A knife.
Okay. Knives, yes, I saw a couple knives.
Warden, would you say that if you would have been in control, you would have recommended that the institution be stormed?
I don't understand what you mean.
Well,
by
in other
being
words,
control.
taken over by force.
No, I would not have said that. I would have evaluated the situation very, very carefully. I'm not exactly sure what my decision is, but to say that I would have been stormed, I can't say
Do you
that.
think that the governor coming was a very important ingredient in the solution of the problem?
Being on the inside a cell with 3 prisoners protecting me, I had very little communication. As far as my own personal feeling is, I'm very proud of our governor. I see him in a different light, and I think the people of New Jersey are kind of lucky.
Warden, what happened to you in the almost 24 hours you were in custody? Where were you kept? How were you treated? What was said to you? And what did you know about your chances of getting out?
What will be different?
Precautions of what kind,
To
sir?
make sure that this doesn't happen again. Have you decided to take any precautions to change anything at the prison?
I don't think my crystal ball is any more clear now than it's ever been before, sir.
Warden, if the behavior of the men in the cell with you can be compared to that of a gentleman, how will the others act?
There is always, within a group, or violence somewhat bent toward creating problems. And they were pretty well, I think, kept controlled by those who didn't really want anything to do with this because of the, I think, consequences. And I'll say that's the vast majority of that population at Rahway.
Warden, we were told that after Attica you had a discussion with your guards, and there was one report that you had told your guards if they were ever taken as hostage, you would expect them to resign. Is that correct?
I beg your pardon?
To resign because you take the jail first and then the hostages.
I'm not sure I understand that question.
We were told that you had a discussion with your guards after Attica, and you spoke to them about what you expected of them if there was a similar situation at Rahway. Is that correct?
That should be enough.
Okay.
I'm sorry, gentlemen.
Let me just
I
ask
don't
you,
recall that.
which demands do you think are reasonable? Which of the inmates' grievances do you think are reasonable?
What about amnesty?
Which demands?
Frankly, I don't know which demands were made to give that kind of an answer, sir. At this point, I'm not thinking that clearly.
Warden, thank you very much, Warden.
Gentlemen, I think that's
Thank you, gentlemen.
What specifically were their grievances?
Well, they were mainly about living conditions, about their treatment. They say they're being harassed and beaten by guards. They said the doctor there gives them aspirin for everything. He examines them with their clothes on, stuff like that. Say the food is lousy, and they have no rehabilitative programs whatsoever. They say no vocational training, no educational training.
About he was jumped badly in the auditorium and possibly stabbed.
We had heard some shouts from the window that come and get the warden, he needs a doctor or something to that effect.
That would be easily capable of verifying the things I heard.
What is the feeling in there? What is the feeling of the people in there at the present time? Do they have any hope that there's any negotiations going to take place, or how do they feel?
They're very, well, basically right now they're hopeful.
Is there dialogue going on in there? Are the prisoners talking with negotiators?
They've been talking with the prisoners. Who's been talking with the detectives, captain, guards, the priest? They've all been in there at one point or another attempting to talk to the prisoners.
We've seen some scattered fires. Can you give us an idea of the extent of damage inside?
I have no idea. It was just like you stuck
We've
out.
also seen a number of ambulances pulling up here. Can you give us an idea of who they've been taking out?
They took out a man, a guard, who somehow was not under among the 5 hostages being held by the inmates. Somewhere during the raid, he managed to lock himself in a john somewhere, and the prison officials came in and burned him out.
Charles, you were
through the window.
talking before about something the warden had told the guards after Attica. Could you tell us about that?
Okay, I was speaking with the guards and working with the Red Cross, and I really hope nothing happens to the Red Cross or any of the people who... Because, well, we did a lot of work shoveling a lot of coffee. But as the day progressed, it became very tedious, very tiresome, and people start talking to one another. It was a very friendly conversation. And one guard said to me, the warden got us together at one point after the Attica riots, and said, if this jail is ever taken over, you should resign if you're taken hostage, because first we'll take over the jail and then we'll go after the hostages. And this was told me by one guard, and then it was verified by guard after guard after guard, and they didn't even have to talk to the other guard to know that this guard had said this to me.
Wasn't there a plan to go in there this morning to storm the prison?
As far as I could observe, yes.
Are there any indications tonight that there will be a raid?
No indications whatsoever.
Why did they change their mind? Why didn't they go in there?
I'm really not sure.
What were they taking out of those ambulances and emergency vehicles earlier? Was that food or medical supplies? What was that they were taking in? Did you see?
They were taking stretchers in.
No, but they seem to be taking boxes of things. What were those?
Oh, the correction officers, most of them would be staying here.
Is it true that they've cut off water and electricity inside?
They cut off water, and for a time...
How about food? Are they
for a
getting
time
food?
today, they cut off the heat.
Did you hear any of the prisoners speak? Did you hear them threaten lives of hostages?
No, I didn't hear any more than you heard from outside these windows.
How far into the prison did you get?
I got as far as any newsman got.
Well, what about damage? Do you have any knowledge of what damage has been done in there?
The,
How's that? Don't pull on my jacket. Come on, man.
Tom, you're never going to get started if you don't start now.
Your time's around. I'll have to do it again.
Just a minute now. Don't pull on me. I was here first. Tom.
Okay.
Chris. Go.
Ready?
Chris. No, we're not ready. Chris, come around here.
All right.
Statement by Tom
Read it a
Duran.
couple times.
All right. This is
Move that goddamn camera somewhere.
this is confirmation of a report which was carried earlier but not released by the department. Mr. Archibald Alexander. Mr. Archibald Alexander, who is a member of the Board of Governors here at Rahway, submitted this proposal to the governor on behalf of the prisoners. A promise that if 3 reporters were permitted into the institution, the inmates would release 1 hostage. After the release of that hostage, the reporters would enter the seized area and accept a list of demands from the prisoners. Once the demands had been turned over, the prisoners would release the remaining hostages. The 3 reporters are John Needham from United Press International, Carl Zeitz from Associated Press, and Stanley Terrell from the Star Ledger. As I said, this is confirmation of a report carried earlier but not released by the Department of Institutions and Agencies.
Has the hostage been released? Has the hostage been released?
No, there have been no hostages whatsoever released yet. The reporters are sitting there waiting at the present time.
Is there a time deadline on when they will release the hostage?
Prison?
They're sitting in the front area, but they have not been admitted to the seized area of the prison as yet.
You know why they haven't?
No, I don't know why not. No, beg pardon?
When will they be let in? Do we know?
I have no idea. They're waiting at the present time, and I don't have any idea what the holdup is right now.
Does the hostage come out after they go in?
As I said, they will be permitted into the institution, and upon that, they are now in there. 1 hostage should be released. Then upon receiving the demands of the prisoners, they will then release the others. I do not know who the first hostage to be released will be. I do not know when the first hostage will be released.
Where will he be brought?
I have no idea.
How was this plan worked out? And with whom?
As I said, this was a plan submitted by Mr. Archibald Alexander, who is a member of the Board of Governors, and submitted to the governor on behalf of the prisoners.
When will television cameras be permitted inside?
I have no idea.
How many?
That's about all I can give you now, man.
One last question. We have reports.
Can you arrange to bring them here? That's the so we'll know what to do.
I can't.
Watch it, fellas.
Are you still?
Hit it again, Joe.
Okay, Doug. How are you?
Okay, trying to put the light on.
Keep the lights, please.
Hey, what's the good boy?
Inmates all over the tiers.
They were running loose?
Yeah, they taking the keys from us. All the keys were taken.
And could you just briefly summarize exactly what you saw and what happened, if you could, please?
Approximately 10:30 last night, there was 250 men in the auditorium. They wouldn't leave. Mr. Vuksavage, the warden, had tried to talk to him. They had told him that they were going to tear the prison apart. And he had told them, you have too much to lose by doing this, and that's when it hit. They went crazy. One of the inmates had his arm around Mr. Vuksavage, and Mr. Vuksavage had turned to get his arm off him, and the inmate turned around and hit him. And that was it. Every inmate in that institution had jumped on Vuksavage.
Now, was the warden stabbed at that point?
I don't know. I was maybe 30 foot from him.
When you got back to the cells now, were you able to see Vuksavage up there when they first took you up?
When we passed his cell, the cell they had him in. We had seen him laying in the cell.
Was he laying alone with the prisoners?
No, there was, I believe there was 2 other inmates in the cell with him.
What would they seem to be? Threatening him, guarding him?
No, it was, we were being held hostage, but some of the men wanted to, you know, finish us off right then and there, I guess you could say.
Well, what happened at 7 this morning when the prison...
Yeah, well, that I have my own feelings about. 7 o'clock this morning, naturally we had radios in the cell. They had come over that the stormtroopers were going to come in. And right away, everybody got their shivs, their pieces of wood, they had chunks of iron. The 3 of us that were in the cell, we were in the cell with 3 other inmates, and they had their shivs out, and they had told us, if they come through that center door, you're done for. We don't have anything to lose. And that was the extent of that. So we sat there with our, you know...
Well, what weapons do they have besides shivs? These shivs, were they homemade?
Homemade shivs.
Anything else? Any guns?
No, I didn't see any guns.
All right, how did it end? I mean, what do you think brought about the end of this?
I really don't know. I really don't know. From the men that were in the cell that I was in, we had 3 inmates with us all the time to the 3 officers. We were all tied up. And their gripe was that if they would get a crew of citizens in there, they wanted Gibson there, they wanted this Mrs. Waterman to supervise the lockup. In other words, when this was all over, they were afraid that the sticks were going to come out. And Mr. Vuksavich had promised them that there would be no sticks coming out.
I see. Now you are bruised and black eye. Now you were assaulted. You were overcome by these inmates. Could you tell me about that?
Well, in the auditorium, I was jumped by, I guess it was 5. Just fists and pieces of chair, pieces of wood. And they got a few good shots in on me. And then when we went back to the cell block, I had given a man a charge, institutional charge, a previous day before, or 2 days before. And he had an attitude, so he worked me over a little when he got in there. But the other men had got him out right away.
Were you separated from each other while she was held, or were you all together?
3 of us were in one cell. The superintendent was in a cell by himself, and the other fella, I believe his name is Henderson, he only had started working Monday. He was in a cell by himself.
Were you ever frightened for your life?
I sure was, and I'm not ashamed to say it.
But that was the only threat they made, was at 7
That was it.
No other threats?
Just previously during the day, if they do come in, you're finished, you know.
What were some of the gripes that they had?
I don't know any of the gripes.
When you saw the warden, you passed that cell when first taken to yours. What kind of condition did he seem to be in? Was he in pain? Was he groaning? Did he say anything to you as you passed?
No, he didn't see us.
How far were you from the warden for the rest of the time you were there? Were you able to,
3 cells.
Were you able to hear him say anything, hear any of the talks between him?
No.
Did any prisoners go into the cells at any time to beat him up during the period he was there?
I don't know. You can't see the cell next to you.
How about your cell? Any come in your cell?
To Attica at any time?
Yeah. You know, I haven't given it any thought.
How long have you been in the business?
2 years.
You going to keep the job back?
I don't know yet. How old are you? 23.
Ken, in the time that they had you from after they put you in the cell and did they post a guard on you?
Right, at all times.
Did the guard have to protect you from other prisoners?
Right, that was it. Yes, he did. He had to get a couple guys out.
Were there any incidents during the period from the time you were put in the cell until you were released where guys tried to get into the cells to you to beat you up?
Just one man had come in the cell and soaked what they call, I sold him a ticket a couple days ago. I gave him a charge, and he was a little bit drunk, and he took an attitude towards it, so he had a few shots in, but as soon as the inmates that were guarding us had seen what was going on, they had pulled him right out.
There were no other similar attempts?
Well, when they broke us out.
Where do you think this prisoner got whiskey?
They make it. Very common. Very common. Gallons of it.
You were saying when they broke you out?
When they broke us out tonight, they had told us that this 4-wing, which evidently had taken charge of the whole deal with the hostages, there were 3 groups. There was a group that wanted us to get out. That was the men that had guarded us were included in that. There was a group that wanted to do us in right then and there. And then there was a group that didn't want anything to do with it. And when they took us out, we had to go through the back sections of the wing and through little nooks and corners and stop in other cells.
Right.
So these inmates that were with us, they had their shivs and their pieces of wood. They were keeping the other inmates away from us.
Are you surprised that this happened here at Rahway State Prison? Have you had any indications that something like this might happen?
I'm surprised it happened, very surprised, because compared to any other institution in Jersey that I have been in, Rahway... It's done. This was a spur-of-the-moment thing, and I don't believe it was organized.
Now, watching a movie?
You're right.
What movie were they watching?
I don't have the least idea what it was.
Are you married?
No, I'm not.
Where do you live?
Tom's River.
Now, when did you find out that you were going to be let go? And describe to me what happened at that point.
Well, there was all different negotiations throughout the day if we were going to be let go or not. Number one, they had told us the only way we'll let you go is if the administration says there'll be no clubs coming back in. They wanted a complete amnesty. They didn't want anybody being prosecuted for anything. They had realized that they had fought a battle, they tried, and there was no place they could go. And they had known that if the stormtroopers did come in and they had killed us, there would have been, I don't think there would be many of them left.
So in other words, they were aware of what happened at Attica, and they themselves did not want the same situation
Right,
here.
I believe they wanted it. They didn't want it.
Now, you had stated...
Right, this is what they use.
Do you believe that Governor Cahill playing such a big role in this has helped a great deal?
I don't have the least idea. Like I said, we were confined. We didn't know what the administration was thinking or what they were doing.
Well, describe to me, however, the attitude of the inmates towards you. Were they being careful of guarding you?
Yes, they were careful of guarding us. I didn't want anything to happen to us because we were their ticket out, you know.
Were they protecting you from other inmates?
Right.
Were there inmates there who wanted to do you harm no matter what?
When we had broke out tonight, when they had let us go, there was 3 different groups of inmates. One group wanted to let us go, and that was the group that was guarding us. One group wanted to finish it right then and there, and then have the administration come in, and there was a third group that didn't want to have anything to do with it. And when our cell door was open, they had told us this, and they had walked along us all the way out.
Would you say that black militants led this?
I wouldn't know. I don't know who the leaders were.
Would you have wanted the troopers to come in and take the place by force, even if it meant losing your life?
Hell no.
Ending in surgery.
First items we have, do you all have the names and addresses and ages?
No, we sure appreciate it.
Okay. Now this will start with patients that were received last evening. First group is patients that were received last evening. These were given out last evening too, but if you're interested in them, I will pass them on. First one is Edward O'Beirne, O-B-E-I-R-N-E, 38 Spruce Road, Howell Township, New Jersey, age 42. Mr. O'Beirne was admitted, suffering from lacerations left side of the chest. Next, patient Robert Madigan, M-A-D-I-G-A-N, 557 Jefferson Street, Carlstadt, 36 years old. He was admitted, suffers from lacerations left shoulder.
When was he admitted?
These are all last night. Next is George Riffel, R-I-F-F-E-L, 4 Pine Tree Drive, Colonia, age 39. Lacerations right cheek. He was treated and released. Richard McMahon, M-C-M-A-H-O-N, 19 West Price Street, Linden, age 26. Lacerations the neck. He was treated and released. David Ekdahl, E-K-D-A-H-L, 1125 Ingwood Place, looks like INGWOOD Place, Plainfield, age 25. He was admitted to the hospital. Injuries related to the cervical section of the spine. Next is Joseph Smith, 16 Laurel Street, Carlstadt. He was treated and released. Next, James Kovacs, Kovacs, 27A, Parkview at Madison in Lawrence Harbor. He was treated and released, had laceration of the scalp, age 28. Now, all these were last night patients that came in. Any comments on this?
Well, I would add that they're all in very good condition at this point. We don't have any particular problems with any. The lacerations on Mr. Byrne, who is upstairs, are apparently superficial. We have no serious internal injuries. Mr. Madigan, Officer Madigan rather, did have a penetrating wound to the chest, and his condition is certainly very satisfactory. I would consider it good.
What about Warden Vukovic?
Well, suppose we hold off until we get to that. His condition is good.
Okay. Now, these are patients that came in this evening. First one received was Anthony Piscatelli, Piscitelli, 1701 Ocean Avenue, Belmar, age 24. He was admitted, injuries to the back and neck. Next is Vuksevich Samuel, capital Vuksevich. Address is Rahway Prison, age 43. He was admitted. I'll let Dr. Newman comment on the injuries.
Do you want me to comment on Mr. Savage now? His condition is good. We have just completed x-rays. I do not have a final report. Our radiologist is not here, but from what I see, there are no serious injuries. There do not appear to be any broken bones. It looked to me, when I originally examined him, as though he probably had a fracture in the pelvic area. There is no apparent fracture as far as I can see at this point. He has multiple bruises and contusions and several stab wounds of the chest, none of which appear to be deep or serious. His condition at this point is quite good.
When you say several stab wounds, does this appear as if he had been attacked severely by inmates?
There's no question about that in my mind.
He's awake now.
He's awake, talking. He's just been giving a report to several of the state police officers, and he's doing just fine.
So you expect him to get out of this very well?
Oh, I would say yes. I don't foresee any difficulty along the line with any of the patients that we have admitted, barring, of course, any unforeseen complications. They're all in such shape that I don't think we're going to have any problems here at all.
All the hostages that were released tonight, you have admitted to the hospital?
No, I have several which are not going to be admitted. I'm waiting for the final films to come through before I say so with any assurity, but I really don't believe that we're going to admit two of them. One had no injuries whatsoever, although we checked him over. That's Officer Benjamin Henderson from East Orange. There are no apparent injuries. I believe he has been discharged already.
We had Henderson Benjamin, 51 Eppirt, Eppirt Street, East Orange, age 29, no apparent injuries. Monteyunas John, Monteyunas, 185 Nesbitt Terrace, Irvington, age 26. Possible injuries, right arm, jaw, back. Iorio Alfonso, I-O-R-I-O, first name Alfonso, 592 Johnstone Street, Perth Amboy, age 27. Possible injuries of the left radius and the right elbow, left shoulder area. Then we had another officer who apparently went to Perth Amboy hospital last evening was examined and released, and he apparently experienced some discomforting conditions today and came to Rahway Hospital. He was examined and indicated that he should be admitted for observation, has possible injuries of the back and ribs, and was admitted to the hospital.
Who's that?
This is Lisicki, Lisicki, Robert, 44 Leek, Leik Avenue, Carteret. Then we have one other officer, capital Koetsier, Kenneth, 34 Tobago, Tobago Avenue, Toms River, age 23, indicated he had complained of pain in his head and right eye, and he is still, I think, in the emergency center being examined.
All right. Has any of the inmates been brought here to the hospital?
Not to my knowledge.
Right. In other words, you have no report at all on their conditions?
No.
All right. Would the prison officials call in any physicians here from Rahway Hospital to go to the prison?
38 lives in his hand. It's hard to tell, you know, it's very easy on a sort of when you don't have the human factor involved. I mean, say it was a mathematical problem that you could make this hard, fast decision, but when you look down in that yard and have to make this decision, and perhaps there is some slim chance of saving 38 lives, and I'm talking about a person that maybe personally knew a lot of the wives, a lot of the children, and it's a very hard decision to make.
I can appreciate that it would be, but nevertheless, the issue raised by my question in terms of just general policy ought to be explored. Would you care to comment upon whether it is wise as a matter of general policy to commence negotiations when prison employees are taken and held as hostages?
Well, it's a question that under, well, I can't say normal conditions, but in practice, to go right in immediately if you have enough help, if you have enough strength to take over a position. This doesn't give them enough chance to get set and probably gain strength and weapons and things of that sort.
Do I understand your response then to be that the optimum response to a situation such as I have described is immediate application of overwhelming force to put down the insurrection?
Apparently would be the best thing to do. But you must know this, and I can't argue with this. Mr. Stroller and myself are both hostages, and due to the decision of the day that they did come in, we can't argue with that point of coming in or when they came in, because the day they came in was the best day for both of us. Yes.
And I suppose at least the argument could be made that the kind of response made at Attica might have...
Or in Auburn, but also in their programs which are geared to the problems and the personnel of the 20s and 30s. And whether it's health, when today we find that 60% of our inmates were actively using narcotics prior to admission, we have no problem for narcotics addicts in any one of our state prisons. Whether it is education, what with the increased technological demands on each one of us, the only requirement in New York State Prison is that an inmate attain a 5th grade or borderline literacy level of accomplishment. Whether it is in the area of religion, where the 3 traditional religions are recognized, but unfortunately somehow we don't recognize that the population in our prisons today is devoted to other religions, and who of us in correction is the one to say which is the true religion? There doesn't seem to be any accommodation for the Muslims and for other religions. And whether it is our vocational programs, whereby college education. But I think that we've got to recognize we must work with what we have. 75,000 correctional personnel are working on the line in our prisons across this country. 95% of them are white. And that's a figure that runs pretty true for New York State, despite the fact that the population in New York State prisons is over 50% black, and in addition to that, a large number of Spanish-speaking. But one of the real problems is that of these line officers, only 25% of them are under the age of 35. We are failing to attract people to corrections, and one of the leading causes for leaving corrections among people is the lack of opportunities for advancement. And we know further that the profile of the correction officer shows that he has barely more than a high school education. In fact, there's only one element. There is no way for a fellow who is incarcerated in one of our institutions in communicating his grievances to the man up front, the man who sets the policy and operates these institutions. And I think that the principal way for communicating between the inmates and those in authority will be through better trained correction officers who not only can understand the problems of a person who's incarcerated, but also can have a little sensitivity for the problems of the family and friends whom the inmate leaves on the outside and whose problems he brings with him when he comes to a prison. And third, I would suggest that the Congress expand upon what it has already provided in allowing states to make up their matching requirement with regard themselves to any of the particulars. I don't know how Clarence Jones feels, but each time I recall what happened at Attica, it is an equally disturbing experience as it was then. But as disturbing as it is, I think we've got to look at this very closely. I commend this committee for taking the lead in taking an objective stance with regard to this. I hope it will be productive. And I hope it will be productive for this reason. A few weeks ago, I was privileged to appear with you, Mr. Chairman, in Philadelphia. And you'll recall the chairman of the Fortune Society, in response to a question from a legislator in Florida, said, "Do you fellows in prison ever think about your victim? You're always talking about your past crimes." And you remember he responded, "Yes, we think about our next victim." And every man and woman in prison today is looking forward to the day when he or she is to be released. Unfortunately, all too many of them are looking forward to the following day when their next victim is going to be you, it's going to be I, it's going to be all of our citizens across this country. So I thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to continue to work with you, and I look forward to hearing from my
Senator,
friend.
before you conclude, would you care to give just a brief summary of...
I think otherwise unwilling inmates to participate in that rebellion. They found what I think was their common denominator of despair among the inmates. And you may recall there was that great peroration by Flip Crowley, one of the leaders, when he said, "We do not want to rule, we want to live. But if we cannot live like people, let us at least try to die like men." Now I know that Flip Crowley and many of the other leaders were among the living when the count came after the facility was regained. But I think that they found this common denominator of despair. Despair which came from an inability of the inmates to communicate their grievances to those who were in a position to make a difference. I don't think it was the bad food, because we know in the correction department in New York State that the kitchen at Attica was the best within the entire department. I don't know how you can do that on 62 cents a day, but that's the reputation it had. In addition to that, I think that there was a failure to recognize that these are men, that they are men that have to be kept busy, they have to be kept employed not in make-work projects, but in things which will make them believe that those in authority recognize their dignity and are preparing them for release. But basically, Mr. Chairman, I think the problem has been that there has been a wall of insensitivity between the inmates and those who are their keepers. And we know that until only a year ago there was a rule in the department that you could not speak to an inmate if you were a correction officer except in the course of giving an order. And I don't mean to oversimplify the causes of Attica, but if we don't find an answer to the problem of how there can be better communication, I don't think we're going to find any answer to any of these problems, not only at Attica but elsewhere. And that, once again, resolves itself into whom you select as correction officers and how you train them.
Thank you very much, Senator. The committee will inquire. If I may now, I'll call on Mr. J.
And the reading of correspondence from inmates before and after Attica causes me to ask over and over, what are prisons really for anyway? Are they mere custodial warehouse centers for unwanted human baggage, or are they societies of confinement serving some useful human social purpose? Now, I'd like, if I might, I'd like to read to you, and I'd like to have it in the record, talk with the rebellious inmates. An assault on Cell Block D was justified by Governor Rockefeller and prison authorities as necessary to prevent prisoners from carrying out cold-blooded killings they had threatened from the start of their rebellion. On the day of the invasion by the state police and Monroe County sheriffs, we were told all of the dead hostages had had their throats cut by the inmates. Now the Monroe County medical examiner certifies that all dead hostages were killed by buckshot and rifle bullets. In the absence of any credible evidence of rifles and shotguns being in the possession of the inmates, the likelihood is that all hostages and inmates who were killed were slain by gunfire from the invading state police and sheriff's assault force. This was written, of course, before any of that was confirmed. Under such circumstances, we must ask, are the inmates of Cell Block D guilty of the deaths of the hostages, or are those state and prison authorities who ordered the assault upon the inmates? We welcome and endorse Governor Rockefeller's plan to appoint an independent citizens panel to investigate all of the circumstances of the Attica tragedy. In our judgment, amnesty was neither legally nor morally impossible. Amnesty only required a reallocation of the social and political values underlying our legal and judicial system. It orients their attitude toward the outside world. It's largely going to be shaped by the experiences they have while they are in these institutions. When they come out, they are ready for us. They are ready for us. They are more angry at us than they were when they went in. And it's almost having prisons without some of the programs, for example, that Senator Dunn has actually recommended. The question of having the guard force and other correctional personnel better trained, having them more responsive to the inmate population. A proposal, for example, to have greater inclusion of black and Puerto Rican people in the correctional personnel does not demand that the only way in which you can administer a prison that has a high population is that you have all black or all Puerto Rican, shall we say, guards. No, that's not the issue. It's just that I think if we want to realistically try to find a way of structuring a situation where the maximum possibilities exist for an inmate to return to society with the hope of becoming a law-abiding citizen and becoming a constructive person, then we obviously have to focus on that part of prison life that most affects the inmates, and that is the day-to-day relationship in the cell block, in the yard, that they have with the guards. It's this probably, and I have no statistical evidence to prove this, it's just my belief. It's probably how that individual is treated for months and years, every day, by a guard that he sees in his cell block, or by the doctor that he sees. Probably that relationship that he has one-to-one to that guard, and the sensitivity that the guard may exercise in the exercise of his responsibilities, may have lasting influence in terms of how the inmate feels on his return to society. I want to thank the committee for inviting
to the tragedy of Attica. I
No,
asked
sir.
that, Senator, to you, and I would also ask that to Mr. Jones.
No, sir. Whatever evidence I have been able to gather since and while I was at Attica would indicate no basis for establishing that this was part of a conspiracy. I disagree with the superintendent's conclusion that that was the cause, because it once again represents the trap of simple ends.
Still pretty chaotic back there. We're told in about 45 minutes they'll be able to start bringing some prisoners down for us to talk. So that we're going to grab a bite and we'll come back in 45 minutes.
Is there anything you can tell us at this stage about how the rights of the prisoners are being protected?
I could not tell you anything at this stage. I have not. I've been back in the center. I saw nothing to suggest anything other than that they were being protected. But of course, I didn't see every prisoner in there. We'll just have to see this afternoon.
What's going on in there right now?
Cleaning up. A considerable amount to clean up.
Have you talked to any of the inmates?
Not spoken to any of the inmates at this point. As I say, they tell us they'll be prepared in about 45 minutes to start bringing inmates down who wish to talk to us. And we'll be back in 45 minutes to
What about the guards in there?
We've been waiting.
What about the guards? What's their attitude like this morning?
I didn't see anything unusual.
What's your impression of the attitude in the prison?
I didn't see anything unusual in their attitude. I didn't see any
Give a little he may not.
But of course, I haven't seen all the prisoners.